Alex Eala versus Qinwen Zheng is a blockbuster first-round matchup over at Washington on the hard courts of 2026. Both players are having different seasons so far. Zheng entered the tournament as the number 123 in the world with an 11-win, 11-loss season so far. Her best result actually came last week in Athens, where she made the quarterfinals, eventually losing to Krejcikova in the end, who went on to win the whole tournament. Her best win, though, was actually in Miami, where she took out Keys, who was number 18 in the world at the time.
She is 4 games away from history, and she is about to lose it all. Write that sentence down, because in 19 minutes, you're going to understand exactly what it cost her. Right now, somewhere in Washington, a 20-year-old is about to walk onto a court against a woman she has never beaten. Not once. Not ever. Not in 9 years of trying. But that's not even the real story. The real story happened 3 years ago, at 4 in the morning, in a country that was watching in jeepneys and hospital break rooms and taxi cabs pulled over on the side of the road. And what happened that night still hasn't been answered. Not fully, not yet. Call her Alex. Not a surname, not a stat line. Alex. The girl who got on a plane at 12 years old with a suitcase and no idea what she was walking into. Manila to Mallorca. 7,000 miles. A language she didn't speak. An island she'd never heard of. A tennis academy built for players who already had a blueprint, and she had none. Because here's what almost nobody outside the Philippines understands. That country doesn't make tennis players. It makes basketball players. Hoops nailed to plywood and alleys too narrow to dribble in. If you're a gifted kid in Manila, the sport finds you before you find it, and it is never, ever tennis. The last time the Philippines had won anything meaningful in this sport was 1962. 1962. Before cell phones. Before the internet. Before almost every parent of every kid reading this was even born. So when a 12-year-old girl landed in Mallorca with a racket bag and homesickness she couldn't put into words, she wasn't joining a system. She was starting one, alone, and for a while, it worked. Better than anyone could have scripted. Roland Garros, 2022, girls singles title. First Filipino to ever win a junior Grand Slam. Politicians who'd never watched a tennis match in their lives were suddenly posting about her backhand. It felt like the beginning of something enormous. But here's the part nobody wanted to say out loud because it felt cruel. Because it felt like raining on a parachute that hadn't even opened yet. Junior titles mean nothing. Go look at the list of junior Grand Slam champions from the last 30 years. Most of those names mean nothing to you. Not because they weren't talented. Because juniors is a kiddie pool. And the tour is the ocean. And the gap between them isn't a step down. It's a cliff. In juniors, you play other 17-year-olds. On tour, you play grown women who've spent a decade learning precisely how to dismantle a young player's confidence over 3 brutal hours. So she turned pro carrying a trophy, a flag, and the weight of an entire country's hope on a sport that had never given them anything to hope for. And it was ugly. $15,000 tournaments in front of nobody. Bad hotels, long layovers, losses to players you will never hear of again. By September 2023, she had fallen to 190 in the world. Not respectable, not close to it. 190 means qualifying rounds. It means grinding for a paycheck that barely covers the flight. It means you've sacrificed your entire childhood for a dream that hasn't paid you back a single cent of interest. And that is the version of her who boarded a plane to China. 18 years old, ranked 190. 0 expectations. Nobody watching. Except, yeah, she made the semifinal. And that's when things got strange. Because across the net stood a name that was about to define the next 3 years of her life, whether she liked it or not. A rising superstar from China. 23rd in the world, the presumed heir to an entire nation's tennis obsession. The first set lasted barely any time at all. 6-1. 1 game. It wasn't a contest. It was a demolition. Every ball landed on a line. Every serve looked untouchable. In Manila, it was 4 in the morning, and people were awake anyway, because that's the thing about that country's sports fans. They will lose sleep for the smallest sliver of hope. Second set. Down 2 games to 5. Her opponent stepping up to serve out the match. Take a second and actually sit inside that moment. You are 18 years old. You are 167 ranking spots below the woman across the net. You are 1 single game away from flying home with nothing, and behind you is a nation that hasn't tasted a tennis medal since before your grandparents were your age. And then she saved a match point. Then another one. then another. Something in her simply refused to let the match end. 5-all. She breaks. 6-5. She holds. Tie break. 7 points to 5. She wins the set. And now the whole country is not asleep anymore. It is wide awake. Third set. She breaks serve early. 3 games to 1. Do the math on what that number means. 4 games. 4 games between her and a gold medal final that hadn't happened for this country in 61 years. And then her body sent her the bill. Everything she'd spent surviving that second set war came due all at once, and it came due violently. Legs first, then the serve speed dropped. Then the forehand that had been kissing lines started landing short. And against a killer like that, you only get to land short once. 5 straight games, 6-3, match over. She left with bronze. She had just played the 2 best, most courageous hours of her career. And it wasn't enough. So here's the question that should be sitting in your chest right now. When you give absolutely everything you have and it still isn't enough, what do you actually learn from that? Do you learn that you belong at that level? Or do you learn that your ceiling is 1.5 brilliant sets followed by an empty tank? For a while, a long, quiet, worrying while, the evidence pointed toward the second one. Because 2 years later, in the summer of 2025, everything fell apart again. And this time, it wasn't about heart. It was her body. Her shoulder, her left shoulder, the one that powers every serve, every forehand, everything, simply gave out. And what followed wasn't a slump. It was a disappearance. An entire North American summer, the richest, busiest stretch on the entire calendar, and she produced 70 ranking points. 70. A good single week at a mid-tier event beats that. She dropped down to a minor league event in North Carolina, just trying to remember what her own game felt like. And here's the part that should scare you if you've ever followed a young athlete's career closely. That is exactly the point where prodigies vanish. Not because they weren't good enough, because a joint gave out at 20, and the sport quietly moved on without them while nobody was looking. Ranked 140, a shoulder held together by hope. A bronze medal that felt more like a scar than an achievement. And a name still sitting in her head, undefeated, unbeaten, still standing between her and the thing she wanted most. And then, nobody, not her coaches, not her family, not a single analyst on television, saw what happened next coming. March 2025. Miami. She's ranked 140. She's in the draw on a wild card, which is the polite tennis way of saying the tournament let her in as a favor. No seed, no cameras, no expectations. Just a 19-year-old on an outside court in front of a few hundred people who probably wandered over by accident. Round 2. She draws a Grand Slam champion, a woman who hits the ball harder than almost anyone alive. She wins. Fine, people say. Upsets happen. Round 3. Madison Keys, not a name in decline. A woman who had won a major title 8 weeks earlier and was playing the best tennis of her entire life, at home, in front of an American crowd screaming for her. She beats her too. Now people are watching. Now the clips are spreading. Now an entire diaspora is mobilizing overnight the way only that community can. Round 4, about 5-time major champion. Former world number 1. The most dominant player of her generation on any surface she decides to dominate. She beats her too. 3 Grand Slam champions. 1 tournament, 1 week. A 19-year-old who wasn't even supposed to be in the draw. Back home, the country didn't just watch, it stopped. Matches airing at 4 and 5 in the morning, and people watched from office desks, from classrooms, from sorry store counters, from the back seats of taxis pulled onto the shoulder of the road. And here's why that week matters more than any trophy could. It didn't just prove she had heart. Hangzhou already proved that. What Miami proved was something rarer, something that actually predicts a career instead of just one unforgettable night. Repeatability. She didn't just survive one great opponent. She backed it up, match after match, round after round, recovery in between, level never dropping. That is not willpower. Willpower gets you to 190 in the world and keeps you there forever. Repeatability is the only thing that separates a player who visits the top 30 from a player who actually lives there. And look again at exactly where Hangzhou fell apart. Not her hands, not her talent, her tank. She had nothing left for the third set. Miami was the answer to that exact flaw, on that exact surface, in that exact kind of heat. Hard court, humid, American summer. The precise conditions she is about to walk back into. From that week forward, the graph only points one direction. By the end of 2025, world number 50. First Filipina ever inside the top 50. She'd started that year at 130 and climbed 80 spots in 12 months. 40 wins, 26 losses. Her first WTA title. She posted something short when the season ended. Something about her dreams finally coming alive. And then 2026 hit. And the pace stopped being a nice story and became something the rest of the tour needed to worry about. June, Berlin, round 1, she beats a player who had won. Round 1, she beats a player who had won a title just 3 days earlier. Round 2, she beats the world number 2. Then round 3, she beats another top-tier opponent and reaches the semi-final, and afterward calls her parents from the court. And they are screaming so loud down the phone, she can barely hear herself think. Then Birmingham, a title on grass. Then Wimbledon, 29th seed. First player from the Philippines ever seeded at a Grand Slam. And that alone was a headline before she'd even hit a ball. She wins her opener, wins her second round. Then, third round, center court, the reigning defending champion standing across the net. And she wins that too, in straight sets, after a first-set tiebreak that stretched to 9 unbearable points. First Filipino singles player in history to reach the 4th round of a major. She fell one match later, but by then it didn't matter. The ranking had already jumped to a career-high 28. And here's a detail almost nobody watching is reading correctly. This week in Washington, she's also entered in doubles, partnered with a 46-year-old, 14-time major doubles champion, one of the greatest court readers the sport has ever produced. They practiced together over the weekend, and the tournament posted a soft, sentimental caption about inspiring generations, and everyone treated it like a nice photo opportunity. It is not a nice photo opportunity. It is a calculated insurance policy, because if she loses early in singles, she doesn't leave Washington. She stays. She keeps hitting live balls. In that exact humidity, on that exact surface, in the week before the next tournament begins, standing 10 feet from someone who has been solving hard-court puzzles since before most of us were born. Nobody's calling that a training block. That's precisely what it is. Now, the other side of the net on Monday isn't the same person either. Her opponent has been rebuilding through injury trouble of her own, entering this event on a wild card because her ranking no longer guarantees her a spot. The exact position Alex was in 3 years ago, back in Hangzhou. In fact, this April, when her rival withdrew from a tournament in Germany with an injury, guess who took the open spot in that very draw? Sit with that irony for a second. 3 years ago, one of them was the top seed, and the other was a name buried in qualifying conversations. On Monday, for the very first time in the history of their rivalry, the ranking gap has completely flipped, and that should feel like comfort. Except it isn't. Not entirely. Because in Hangzhou, she had nothing to lose and played like a wildfire with nothing left to burn. On Monday, she is the one who is supposed to win, in front of a country that now expects it from her. And an opponent with nothing to defend and nothing to lose is, without question, the single most dangerous thing you can run into in a first round of anything. Pressure doesn't disappear when you get better. It just switches which side of the net it's sitting on. Which brings us to Monday. Same 2 players, completely different world. And one number that still, after 3 years, refuses to change. She has never beaten this woman. Not in juniors. Not in Hangzhou. Not anywhere, ever. So go back to the question that opened all of this. Did she actually fix the thing that broke her that night? Or did she simply get better everywhere except the one place that matters most? Because remember, she didn't lose in Hangzhou because she was outclassed. She lost because she poured everything into the second set and had nothing left when it counted most. That was the flaw, the entire flaw. And every single thing that's happened since, 3 top 10 wins in a single week, 3 straight victories at the biggest stage in the sport, ending with a defending champion left behind on center court. All of it has been the answer to that exact question. That is not the same 18-year-old who ran out of fuel 4 games from history. That is someone who has learned brutally and slowly how to hold her level across days instead of minutes. So no, Monday does not have to look like Hangzhou. Monday might be the exact match Hangzhou was quietly preparing her for the entire time. And there's a deadline hiding behind all of this that makes the whole thing heavier than it already feels. In a matter of weeks, the cutoff arrives for seeding at the US Open, and right now she is sitting just outside the safety line. Win here, and she edges closer to becoming the first Filipina ever seeded at that tournament. Lose, and the margin gets uncomfortably thin. But zoom out past the ranking, past the deadline, past even Monday itself, because this story was never really about a number. 2 years ago, there was no professional tennis tournament anywhere in the Philippines. Not one! Ever! There is one now. It didn't come from a market study or a boardroom decision. It came from a 12-year-old who got on a plane with a suitcase and simply refused to stop being good enough. Somewhere in Manila right now, kids are picking up rackets who would have picked up a basketball 3 years ago without a second thought. That will still be true long after this ranking resets, long after this rivalry is settled, long after any of us remember the score from Monday. So here's what I can't stop thinking about. If a 12-year-old with no blueprint, no path, and nobody ahead of her could go from 190 in the world to center court at the biggest tournament on earth in under a decade, what happens to the next kid? The one who's starting today with a tournament already built in her own country? A face to look up to, and undeniable proof that it's actually possible? How far does that kid go? On Monday, she walks onto a court in Washington for the very first time in her career, across the net from the one player who has never lost to her. With a deadline ticking and a nation about to lose sleep all over again. Somewhere in Manila, it will be the middle of the night. And people will already be awake, waiting, because after 3 years, they finally get to find out if the story changes. Story changes.